Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, there has been a few more updates to the Red Hat discussion, so I want to go ahead and go over what I have seen. And of course, it's going to boil down into Red Hat whining and doubling down, as they seem to be called out. A couple articles were linked onto the Matrix server. One of those is a comprehensive analysis of the Red Hat GPL issues from the Software Freedom Conservatory. So we're going to have a look at that. We're going to look at Red Hat's statements as of a couple days ago and the two primary competitors and the things that they have said. So to bring you up to speed, if you have no idea what we're talking about, Red Hat decided last week it's going to block off the public access to the Red Hat code. So Red Hat's model basically has been, here's the software. To use it, you basically need to use our software license, and the money is made by support contracts for seat licensing and things like that. And then if you did not want to run for a long time, if you did not want to run a support contract, you just want basically how the Red Hat server is going to work, you'd use CentOS, which of course they purchased in 2014 and then subsequently destroyed, so that it got rid of all of the basic free methodologies to use their system. Now, before we go into the story, it is not a violation of the GPL for them to put the software behind a paywall. That is not a violation of the GPL. The GPL says that anybody purchasing the software has to be able to access the source code. And so to buy the Red Hat, the support license, and then now you have access to the source code, that completely fulfills the GPL. The problem and the questionable part that we talked about on our Thursday stream is, it's questionable if you can if you can do what they're doing to say, if you are buying a site license and then redistributing that, can they cut your access? Because according to the cursory reading of the GPL, no, they can't do that. But there's a little bit of wiggle room and there's a lot of lawyers involved, especially since they were purchased by a big corporate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to talk about where this applies. I'm going to use not a Linux world, but something I'm more familiar with, and that is web servers, and explain what may be going on and things like that. Now, in the middle of all this, I also had a discussion with somebody. I'm not sure what all we can mention or not, so I'm going to mention there. But he did mention a possible top-down order from the powers that be around Washington to curb availability of code for nation-state enemies. We're not going to dive into that one as much, but it was a fabulous conversation, and I think I might agree with that. I just don't know exactly what of that conversation I want to mention. So, but with that, let's go ahead and talk about the information that is all publicly available. First, of course, we will look at a couple of releases. The first of those being, we've covered this one very briefly at the end of our Thursday stream last week. This is the Alma Linux. So when CentOS was killed and replaced with CentOS Stream, and it went from a downstream from Red Hat to an upstream of Red Hat, two distributions jumped in to fulfill a bug-for-bug compatibility with Red Hat, those being Alma Linux and Rocky Linux. Both of these are saying that their desire is basically to replace what CentOS was. Somebody that's a small business, doesn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to throw into service contracts, that simply needs an open source software to work on a server, has a one-for-one bug compatibility with other known servers, because you have software that might be dependent on that, whether it is with the bug or otherwise would need to function. And as a web developer, the best example I can give you is cPanel. We're going to dive more into that at the end of the discussion, but let's go ahead and look at this. Now, this one did come out Thursday last week when we were doing our video, so we did cover this very briefly. And basically it means that where they used to be able to just access the code and package the distribution and send it out, now this is being hindered. Now, how do they get the code? Well, if you purchase a software license to get access to the code, they are saying now that they can pull your ability to do that, which, as I said, is technically a violation of the GPL on some level or degree. But at the same time, that is a very hairy argument, and as the Freedom Software Conservatory has suggested, Red Hat has always skated on the line of legality, and we're going to get into their article here in a bit. But what it means is they need a new solution. Instead of automating their pulls from the Git of CentOS, which is no longer being updated to the mainstream Red Hat, they have to basically do all the manual, because you can still see the things that are changing. It's just they need to be manually applied instead of an automated applying, which basically increases the cost overhead. So if you do like these free and open source systems, even though you may not be able to afford a Red Hat license, sending some donations to Alma Linux or Rocky Linux is probably the best direction you want to go. Now, after our Thursday show, another update a couple days later came out from Rocky Linux. Of course, we did cover their previous update saying, yeah, we have a way to move ahead. This is what they say, though, on June 24th. Brave New World, the path forward for Rocky Linux. What is the power of an open source community? It's the ability to dig deep in critical moments, to rise above and carry on. This week, the greater enterprise Linux community was gifted one such critical moment, and the Rocky Linux project has responded swiftly. Last week, we had identified that we were about 10 updates behind. Wednesday's announcement confirmed these missing updates had not been a simple oversight. We had been solving immediate concerns while simultaneously developing mid and longer term responses. After tireless efforts of team members, we completed the update composes for Rocky Linux 8 and 9, including all updates that were missing, also including all errata information. We have also completed a test upgrades from 8 to 9 in machine staging without the issue. Updates should work as usual with DNFY update. We further developed a process for continuing to supply updates as they are released. Fortunately, we have already had a Peridot build system in place to manage the additional imports and automate them. Publicly available transparency ledgers of all SRPMs and their hashes is also in the works. So this ledger will show SRPMs used, patches applied, and applicable checksums, and so on. This is more manual work than the previous processes, but it does abide by the licensing agreements. The processes may evolve as we continue to seek more efficient solutions and automation. Nevertheless, we remain fully committed to ensuring our users are not disrupted. Rocky Linux lives on. Thank you for your patience. So, what it appears is to happen, and this was actually, it might have been in Alma's Q&A. People asked, are they doing this explicitly to squash these free open source alternative like Rocky Linux and Alma, as they did to CentOS? That seems to be what happened. CentOS was a separate distribution until it was purchased by Red Hat and then subsequently destroyed after an IBM takeover. And so now they have been accused of being more corporate. And some people have said, the people at Red Hat are probably hurting over this because it's the order came from top down and they have nothing to do with countering it anymore. And I understand that entirely. But this gets us to Red Hat's very whiny double down. And so I want to read this because it is a fascinating read. This is 2 days after Rocky Linux has demonstrated that, yes, we are going to continue on. And this article basically sums down to say, there's people that are taking our money by producing a one-by-one bug compatibility. That's exactly how this reads. Now, to be fair, I think that this is yet another, you will write a whiny article because us at IBM, don't forget who we worked with in 1944, okay? So I can understand that, and we have a little bit of grace for the people developing behind the project, but it begs a bigger business question and a bigger FOSS and open source question than we really have time for, It begs bigger questions than we can really address all in one sitting. But here's just more information. So here is the Red Hat response. I spent a lot of time walking this weekend, thinking about reactions from our industry to my last blog post. That's the one we talked about on Thursday. We've been called evil. I was called an IBM exec who was installed to turn Red Hat closed source, and that's the nice stuff. Let's clear things up. Give me a hanky. All right. My name is Mike McGrath. I'm the Vice President of Core Platforms Engineering at Red Hat. I've been here for 16 years, and before I started working here, I was a volunteer in the Fedora project. Open source and all that phrase entails are very important to me. Over the past week, I've seen many people say many unkind and untrue things about hardworking Red Hatters who, like me, value this work to its core. Despite what's currently being said about Red Hat, we make our hard work readily accessible to the non-customers. Red Hat uses and will always use an open source development model. When we find a bug, or write a feature, we contribute our code upstream. This benefits everyone in the community, not just Red Hat and our customers. Now, I'm going to stop right here and say, when he says we've always made our code accessible to non-customers, that would appear to be less true now than it was, because they have said in that last blog post that the only way to access that code is to be a Red Hat customer. So that would appear to be a mistruth from the surface as I read it and understand the issue. He continues, we don't simply take upstream packages and rebuild them. At Red Hat, thousands of people spend their time writing code to enable new features, fixing bugs, integrating different packages, and then supporting that work for a long time, something that our customers and partners need. Okay, so that is true. There is a lot of work that goes into this, and if you are not aware of how much work Red Hat is supported for years. This is important because as when they put out CentOS usually has about a 5 to 8 year life. And when you roll up a new CentOS and you build an application on top of it, it is very difficult to migrate that. Going back to my experience as a web developer, as I'm building out a CentOS, and right now I'm not buying my hosting packages. I have built my hosting packages on a Linode. Use my affiliate code there, tlm.li/Linode. That's what I'm using to host my stuff. And then I installed cPanel on top of that. And then I buy a cPanel license. The problem is, I did that right before CentOS was killed, and that hard work that took a lot of work, and now I have dozens and dozens of client websites on just that one server. Now I have to move them again. And that is yet another large amount of time, because these enterprise servers are supposed to be long supported, and that means that they are well supported well beyond the kernel has moved on, well beyond other packages have moved on. So they are right. There is a lot of stuff that comes in here. Now, here is where the problem comes in. I think this is the paragraph. This is about the hours and late nights we spend backporting a patch to the code that is now 5 to 10 years old or older at any given time. We are supporting 3 to 4 major release streams while applying patches and backports to all. Additionally, when we develop Red Hat fixes, we develop fixes for issues in Red Hat. We don't just apply them to Red Hat. They are applied upstream first to projects like Fedora, CentOS Stream, or the kernel project itself, and then we backport them. Maintaining and supporting an operating system for 10 years is a Herculean task, and that is enormous value in what we do. And I agree. And this is why the people that need this and do not want to deal with this headache, who have massive corporations and can afford thousands and thousands of dollars in server fees, it makes a whole lot of sense to buy Red Hat and have the support packages so that you can have migrations and you can have all this place in, and that's what you are paying for. Okay. Now he writes in bold, we will always send our code upstream and abide to the open source licenses in our projects use, which includes the GPL. We're going to get back to that in a bit. When I say we abide by the various open source licenses that apply to our code, I mean it. I was shocked and disappointed how many people got so much wrong about open source software and the GPL in particular, especially industry watchers and even veterans who I think should know better. The details, including open source licenses and rights, matter, and these are things Red Hat has helped not only to form, but also to preserve and evolve. Okay, so this paragraph, he is completely right. A lot of people have said you're not allowed to lock the source code behind your customer portal. That is true. Let me tell you something. It is true when he says people have gotten that wrong. To clarify, yes, the GPL allows you to lock your code behind a paywall. But the GPL license requires that once a person has purchased access to that code, you can make no restrictions on it. That is the part, the first part they are right on. The second part, a little bit of a nebulous portion there. And so it begs a little bit of question. So he writes a whole paragraph in bold. I feel that much of the anger from a recent decision around the downstream sources came from either those who do not want to pay for the time, effort, or resources going Red Hat, or those who want to repackage it for their own profit. This demand for Red Hat code is disingenuous. That right there is their whiny double down. Okay, they are literally taking a swing at Rocky and Alma, because what is Red Hat? Red Hat is purchasing the support contracts to help maintain your servers on an enterprise end. It is not for the person who has low resources, who wants to say, I'm okay with the risk of having to support this myself. Let me access the code. Because if it's an open source system, you should be able to do that. Now, in the GPL, if you were to sell access to your code, you cannot make a restriction that somebody else does it. This paragraph is a violation of the GPL in that sense. Now, these people are not saying we're taking the Red Hat code and we're releasing exactly as Red Hat, because Rocky and Alma, that while being a bug-for-bug compatibility, they're not just taking everything Red Hat and haha, it's free Red Hat. It's like pirated software. It's not. That's not what they're talking about here. Okay, but what's going on here is that they are literally taking a swing at the people who want to have the open source servers. So when I need to spin up a new hosting panel on cPanel next year because CentOS is being killed, the version I'm running is end of life next year, and that is customer servers, and we have to keep those on a higher secure tier, I cannot pay Red Hat thousands of dollars. cPanel has gone up 30% since I've been buying licenses. Linode has gone up 20% since I've been buying licenses. My server fees 3 years ago were $500 a year, and now they're closer to $900 a year. Am I going to simply pass that on to all my customers? In the business world, of course you do. I don't want to jack up my rates 30% every single year because cPanel goes up 30% and Linode goes up 20%. And now Red Hat wants to pull down pug-for-pug compatibility to say, oh, nope. You're going to have to pay us thousands of dollars too. I don't have that kind of revenue in my small business. This is a total assault on small business is what it is. Small businesses that need a web server and don't, of course, we all just go to like GoDaddy and buy the servers there, but why would I want to? GoDaddy's a horrible company. Just like IBM is a horrible company, it would appear by extension IBM or Red Hat appears to be moving into a horrible company. So this is really their whiny double down. Now he goes in, we have to pay the people who do the work, those passionate contributors grinding through those long hours and nights who believe in open source values. Simply repackaging the code that these individuals produce and reselling it is as it is with no value added, make the production of this open source software unsustainable. That includes critical backporting work, future update technologies, and under the development stream. If that work becomes unsustainable, it will stop, and that's not good for anyone. Red Hat was doing just fine before IBM bought it. That's why I think this comes from the top down. Because the business looks at things and says, oh, this thing's putting out a lot more money. Let's figure out how we can extract more cash out of all of the people inside of here. Because that's what big corporates tend to do. They are heartless, they are soulless, and they want more money, and it doesn't matter who in the world is hurt in the process. But you see how this is a complete assault against Rocky Linux and Alma Linux. It's exactly what it is. And then they're not releasing the exact code. They're releasing a bug-for-bug software package is what they're doing. All right. And that's the thing. But I got news for you. Rocky and Alma are also always contributing upstream. They're all part of the same deal. In fact, we'll read about it in the next the next article here. But this is a fascinating take because what they are doing here is they are pulling the code back, locking it behind a paywall, saying if you buy access, we're going to cut off any future access that you have to it because we want to extract more funds. And if you're releasing it, you're just a leech on the community. And that is not what Rocky or Alma are. They are adhering to the free and open source software portion of the community. I'm not going to read the rest. I'm going to link this article down below, but you can read through it. That was the critical part I wanted to get to. They are whining. They are doubling down and crying that Alma and Rocky are not apparently stopped by their plan because that was their plan. Their plan was to squash the open source software that was, in their mind, taken away. Let me speak to you as a van dweller for a moment, okay? Because if you don't know, I do all these video productions from a van traveling around the country. All around this country. Now, way back, maybe a few years back in van dwelling, nearly every Walmart, you could park overnight in a Walmart parking lot. And that's what you hear about. Oh, go to the Walmart parking lot. Well, you really can't do that anymore. Most places in the United States, there's a few places you can. But what has happened is the city ordinances have been pressured by RV parks to pass laws making it illegal to sleep in your vehicle. So much so that in many jurisdictions now, if you own a camper and it's parked on your front lawn, the government overreach says you are not allowed to sleep in your camper parked in your front lawn. Most jurisdictions. Now, the reason they're doing this is they say, well, because people can sleep in the Walmart parking lot, we're getting less money. I got news for you, though. As a van dweller, the people who go and shop and stay at an RV park are completely different people from the people who come and stay at your Walmart parking lot. Okay, the people who come stay at your Walmart parking lot, they're going from destination A to destination B. There's a Walmart halfway. Their supplies are running low. They pull into Walmart. They resupply their van. They sleep overnight, and they wake up at 7 in the morning and drive away. That's what happens. We don't hang out. We don't set up camp. We don't chill, man. That's not what we do. But these people who own the RV parks have it in their mind that since Walmart parking lots are allowing people to stay overnight, they're losing revenue. They're not. It's not your target audience. The end result is, as van dwellers, if you tell us we can't park there, we're just going to skip your town by and go to a town that's more friendly. And your whole city is going to lose revenue because of the nonsense. That's exactly what's going on here at Red Hat. Okay, they're like, look at Rocky and Alma because they have this bug-for-bug compatibility. Okay, the bug-for-bug compatibility means we're losing customers. No, you're not selling the software. You're selling the support. The customer still wants the support, is still going to buy the support. Ergo, they're going to buy your system. But for those of us who want to manage our own support or cannot pay your fees for your own support, we're very happy using the free and open source alternative, so you are squashing our alternatives for no reason because you are a corporatist. What my basic point is that the criticism that Red Hat has gotten, and by the extension, the vice president, is merited. It's not misplaced. It is merited because of these issues. Now, is that the end of the world? No, it's not. Do I hate this person? Absolutely not. I really appreciate the what they're doing and the code and how they support the community in general. And I really, really, really think the only reason this change happened is because a bigger guy at IBM who signs the paychecks said, this is what you're doing. And he had to swallow hard. And I guarantee he spent tears into this blog post writing this because he did not want to write this. Because he is a better person than this. But his hands are tied because IBM now owns the company. That is the sad part. The problem is they are misplaced because they think that every Rocky user would really be a Red Hat user if Rocky didn't exist, and so they're trying to squash it. And that is not the case. Some of us, we're not just cheap. Some of us, we just want to do it ourselves. That's the way I am. I'm a tinkerer. I know I could do better buying this, that, or the other. I just want to do it myself. You know, that's kind of the way I am. But we have one more article I want to cover before this video becomes astronomically long. It's already long, but let's go to this one, the Software Freedom Conservancy. They did a comprehensive analysis of the GPL issues with Red Hat Enterprise Linux business model. Again, we are not going to read this whole article. You can read it yourself. It is very good. I'm going to bring out some of the highlights. So the first thing they said is that Red Hat has always teetered with GPL. Software rights activists, including SFC, that's this website, has spent decades talking to Red Hat and its attorneys about how the Red Hat Enterprise Linux business model courts disaster and is actively unfriendly to community-oriented free and open source software. These pleadings, discussions, and encouragements have, as far as we can tell, been heard and seriously listened to by key members of Red Hat's legal and OSPO departments, and even by C-level executives, but they have ultimately been rejected and ignored, sometimes even with a fine then sue us for GPL violations attitude. Activists have found this discussion frustrating, but kept the nature and tenure of the discussions as an open secret until now because we all had hoped that Red Hat's behavior would improve. Recent events show that the behavior has simply gotten worse and is likely to get even worse. Now, they talk here about the violation. They do highlight, and many people have said, in fact, that raged on our Discord server for a while, saying they're not allowed to put the license behind a paywall. Yes, they are. The GPL license does not restrict you from blocking your source code from being found by the internet at large, the public. It does not have to be publicly available. It only has to be made available to your paying customers. The problem and the issue that we raised on the stream is it kosher with the GPL to say if you sell the code, we will restrict your access to it? That is the questionable part. And I think that it's a part the GPL does not necessarily address. Because technically, yes, because what it basically says is, yeah, we can't sue you for doing that, but we can restrict you from all future updates to our code. And that's just as bad. And so that is that. So they do cover that, clarify that. They talk a little bit about the various issues, and then they actually talk about two major violations that Red Hat has done. We're not going to read any of those, but they both had to do with restrictions to the GPL, which are explicitly forbidden. You may not impose further restrictions on the exercise of the rights granted or affirmed under this license. For example, you may not impose a license fee, royalty, or any other charge for exercise of right granted under the license. Basically, a company utilized Red Hat to distribute a product, and Red Hat came back and asked for royalty fees, and they said no because of the GPL. The second issue was a non-U.S. company, but again, they fought against that. Then they talked about the CentOS acquisition and what happened there, how 2014 they bought CentOS, and by 2020 CentOS was dead. They asphyxiated it, and then they did the stream, and then the stream flipped from being downstream to upstream. So what's in Red Hat wasn't in there, but they were still always updating the code to the Get CentOS GitHub page, but that is what they have since stopped doing. So it's been a long process that all appears to have started right around the time IBM has purchased the company. So what should we do about this? The best thing we can do right now, in my opinion, is support Alma and Rocky Linux as they are working out solutions to stay above this. Obviously, if you're a huge corporate, obviously you're going to be using Red Hat because you don't want to have to maintain the support yourself, and it's worth it for a company. But what I'm saying, and in my perspective, because I said I was going to talk a little bit more about this, so let's go ahead and do this now as we close the video. I'm not one of these computer science guys with these big degrees that's been following the Linux kernel development since the very first version came out. I get a lot of people emailing me like, hey, well, I have a problem on this hardware on this computer. Is this browser? I don't know. Go ask Level 1 Tech. Go to Level 1 Tech's forums. There's people over there that know far more about computers than I ever will know. Okay, because I'm not at my core a hardware guy or that involved in that level of the software in that respect. I'm a guy who wants to use Linux to get real work done. I publish books and I build websites. Now, I was happy doing that. Now, I got into publishing stuff after Linux, but as far as websites and such, I got into doing websites. I was a Windows normie with Adobe software, and I was happy and content doing that until Microsoft decided to release Windows 10 with their privacy violations and their EULA a mile long, and I sat down to read that crap. And then I looked at it and I said, I want nothing to do with this. And so I switched to Linux. That's why this channel covers a lot of privacy, because I switched to Linux because of the privacy factors. Now, that being said, let me bring this back around with the servers and what this has to do with Red Hat. As a web developer, I'm very familiar with different servers. I'm not a guy that just buys some cheap server somewhere and, I don't know, I hear HostGator is good. They're not, by the way. Avoid HostGator. I build my own servers. My client servers are either running on a cPanel that I have actually installed and directly pay a license for, or they're running on ISP config on a Debian server on separate Linode servers. So I have built the servers myself. I maintain the servers myself. And with those being done, I have clients scattered on either one of those. The problem I have is that my CentOS server is going to expire soon, despite I just built it a couple years ago. And now I have to rebuild a server. What am I going to build it on? If Red Hat successfully squashes Alma and Rocky Linux and I have to have something with a one-to-one bug compatibility, it completely sinks my small business because I can't pay Red Hat's fees, nor do I want to, because I'm not going to buy your code and I don't want you to support my software. I can't let me manage the support. And if I have a serious question, it's like the cPanel stuff. If I have a serious problem on cPanel that I can't figure out myself, I can pay cPanel $30 or something and they'll look at it for me. I'm okay with that. Give me a pay to play and that might be an option. But the problem we have is that if they continue to squash these and I have to build another server and put things on top of that, what am I going to do? That raises the bigger questions that we have. And that's why this is anti-small business. This is anti-competitive behavior at its core. And so I'm sorry, I just don't have a lot of compassion for the hate that you have by doing something that is so harmful to the small business community. Because I'm not going to be pirating your software. I just want there to be free and open source solutions available. And that's kind of where I sit in that. So let me know your thoughts about all these in the comments down below. I mentioned Linode in here a few times. If you want to head on over to Linode, use my affiliate link, tlm.li/Linode. I'll put that down in the description near the top. That'll get you started on any type of web cloud servers you need. You can build Rocky over there. You can build Alma over there. You can build CentOS Stream over there if you want. I believe you can build Redhat over there. Cool, whatever you want to do. But that link will be down there, and that's good for $100 in credit, good for 60 days on new qualifying accounts. So thanks for watching. Let me know your comments down below, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.